The courtroom echoed with laughter. The HOA board members smirked, shaking their heads. One of them leaned forward and said, "Your son thinks he can outsmart us? A boy in a wheelchair, trying to take on an entire legal team? This is going to be easy." My fingers curled into fists, but before I could respond, my son raised a hand. His voice was calm. "Actually, I was hoping for a challenge." The room went silent, and in that moment, I knew. The HOA had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. If you think this story is shocking, wait until you hear what happens next. Make sure to subscribe, because you will not believe how this ends. It had started months ago when we moved into this neighborhood, excited for a fresh start. The house was perfect. The community seemed nice. Until we received our first violation notice. "Unapproved wheelchair ramp," it read. My son needed it to enter our home. We had built it within city guidelines, but the HOA had different rules. "It must be removed within 30 days, the letter warned. I thought it was a misunderstanding, so I attended the next HOA meeting to explain. But when I walked in, I saw the smirks, the crossed arms, the looks of superiority. "Rules are rules," the president said, tapping his pen against the desk. "If we make exceptions, where does it stop?" I tried reasoning. "This is not an exception. This is accessibility." He chuckled. "Then maybe this neighborhood is not for you." My blood ran cold. My son sat beside me, his face unreadable. He had heard those words before, but instead of being defeated, he simply nodded. "All right," he said. "We will see about that." I did not understand his confidence until the day we walked into court. The smirks on the HOA board members' faces only grew wider as the judge took his seat. They were so confident, so sure of their power. The president of the HOA, a man named Richard Lawson, leaned over to his attorney and whispered something with a grin. My son, however, sat perfectly still. His fingers tapped lightly against the armrest of his wheelchair, his expression unreadable. Then he slowly turned his head toward me and smiled, a knowing, almost mischievous smile. The judge cleared his throat. "We are here today to address the case of an alleged HOA violation regarding an accessibility ramp installed at the residence of Mr. James Carter." He glanced at my son. "And you are?" My son folded his hands on the table. "Michael Carter. I will be representing my father today." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The HOA's lawyer let out a short, mocking laugh. "Your Honor, is this a joke? The HOA has brought a legal team. He is, 16? Michael smiled politely. 17, actually. And this is not a joke." The judge arched an eyebrow. "You do not have legal representation?" Michael shook his head. "I do not need one." Richard Lawson smirked. "Son, this is a real courtroom, not a school debate. You are completely out of your league." Michael tilted his head slightly. "We will see about that." The HOA's lawyer, a woman in a crisp navy suit, stood up and walked toward the judge. "Your Honor, let's not waste time. This is a clear violation of HOA regulations. Page 36, subsection B states that no exterior modifications can be made without board approval. This family did not request permission, and as such, they must remove the structure." The judge nodded. "Mr. Carter, do you have a response?" Michael adjusted his tie and casually opened a binder. "Actually, I do." He looked up, his voice steady. "The HOA's rule directly violates the Americans with Disabilities Act, which, as you know, is a federal law. According to ADA guidelines, homeowners are legally permitted to make modifications to accommodate disabilities, regardless of HOA regulations." A hush fell over the room. Michael continued, flipping to a specific page. "In fact, There is already legal precedent for this. Case number 2014-AC394, Johnson vs. Maplewood, HOA. The court ruled in favor of the homeowner, stating that no private entity, including an HOA, can override federal accessibility rights. The HOA's lawyer blinked. Richard Lawson's smirk wavered. Michael smiled. So, tell me, should we continue? Or would you prefer to settle this right now? The courtroom was dead silent. The HOA's lawyer shuffled her papers, her confidence suddenly cracking. Richard Lawson's smirk had disappeared completely. He leaned toward his attorney and whispered something urgently, but she just shook her head. She had no response. Michael, still perfectly calm, tapped his fingers on the table. "I can keep going if you want," he said. "I have at least 3 more cases proving that the HOA is in direct violation of federal law. Or," he paused for effect, "you can drop this nonsense now, and we can all go home." The judge turned to the HOA's lawyer. "Counselor, do you have a counter-argument?" She cleared her throat, flipping through her legal pad as if searching for something, anything, to refute him. But there was nothing. Finally, she exhaled sharply. "Your Honor, I need a brief recess to confer with my client." The judge frowned. "You filed this complaint. You should have been prepared." Richard Lawson's face turned red. He clenched his jaw, looking at Michael like he had just been personally insulted. "You think you are smart, kid," he muttered under his breath. Michael smiled, leaning slightly forward. "No," he said. "I know I am." Richard's fingers curled into fists, but before he could say anything, the judge slammed his gavel. "We will take a 15-minute recess." As soon as the judge left the bench, whispers broke out in the courtroom. Spectators who had come expecting an easy HOA victory were now murmuring in disbelief. A woman in the audience leaned toward her husband. "Did that kid just embarrass an entire legal team?" The husband chuckled. "Oh, he is just getting started." Michael turned to me and grinned. "I told you this would be fun." I let out a breath I had been holding. "Michael, where did you learn all of this?" He shrugged. "Ever since I was a kid, I knew people like Lawson would try to push us around. I figured one day I would have to push back." Before I could respond, Richard Lawson stormed up to our table. "This is not over," he hissed. Michael tilted his head. "It kind of looks like it is." Lawson leaned in closer, his voice sharp. "You think you won something here? You and your father do not belong in this neighborhood, and no judge, no law, no loophole is going to change that." Michael's smile didn't waver. "Well, Mr. Lawson, that is an interesting choice of words, because I think it is time you learned exactly who you have been messing with." He pulled out another document from his binder and placed it on the table. Lawson's eyes scanned the page, and as the color drained from his face, I saw something I never thought I would see. For the first time, Richard Lawson looked afraid. Richard Lawson's hands trembled as he picked up the document. His eyes darted across the page, his breathing growing uneven. His lips parted slightly as if trying to form words, but nothing came out. Michael sat back, watching him with amusement. "Go ahead, take your time," he said. "I know legal documents can be hard to process." I leaned over, glancing at the paper in Lawson's grip. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. Then my stomach dropped. It was a deed, a property ownership deed, and it was signed by Michael Carter. Lawson's voice finally broke through the silence, barely above a whisper. This is not possible." Michael casually folded his hands. "Actually, it is. See, while you were busy trying to push us out, I was busy making moves of my own. Your HOA fees? They go to property investors who buy up available lots in this neighborhood. And guess who recently acquired multiple properties, including commercial plots that the HOA relies on for funding? Lawson's face turned white. Michael leaned forward. I own 20% of the properties under this HOA. The entire courtroom gasped. Even the judge, who had just returned to his seat, paused with his gavel in midair. Lawson stumbled back, shaking his head. No, this has to be fake. There is no way. Michael slid another document across the table. Oh, it is very real. And here is the fun part. HOA bylaws state that any individual who owns at least 15% of the neighborhood's property has the right to overrule HOA board decisions, effective immediately. Lawson's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The HOA lawyer frantically skimmed the document, her face turning paler by the second. The judge cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, are you saying that, legally, you have the authority to challenge this HOA's leadership? Michael smiled. Your Honor, I am saying a lot more than that. I am saying that as of this morning, I filed a motion to dissolve the current HOA board due to unethical practices. And with my ownership stake, he shrugged, I now have the votes to make it happen. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Spectators turned to each other in shock, unable to believe what they were hearing. Lawson's fists slammed against the table. You little... Michael held up a hand. Careful now. Threatening a property owner can get you removed from your own meeting. And speaking of removal, he turned to the judge. I would like to formally request that Richard Lawson step down as HOA president, effective immediately. The board can either vote him out now, or we can let the lawsuit handle it. The judge nodded. Based on what I am seeing, you have the legal right to make that request. He turned to the HOA members, who were now shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Lawson looked around, desperately searching for support, but the other board members knew. They had lost. Slowly, one by one, hands went up. The vote was unanimous. Richard Lawson had just been fired from his own HOA. Lawson's face twisted in pure rage as he watched the hands rise one after another. His own board members, his allies, had turned against him. His voice cracked as he barked, You cannot do this! I built this HOA! I made the rules! Michael leaned back in his chair, tapping the table lightly. And now, I am changing them. The judge slammed his gavel. Richard Lawson, as of this moment, you are officially removed from your position as HOA president. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Some spectators smirked, others whispered in shock. The HOA lawyer quietly packed up her files, already knowing there was no fight left to win. Lawson gripped the edges of the table, his knuckles turning white. You do not understand, he hissed. I control this neighborhood. I decide who stays and who goes. Michael shook his head. Not anymore. Lawson's breathing was ragged, his eyes darting around the room in desperation. You think you have won? You think you and your crippled son are safe now? The air in the room shifted. Gasps echoed as silence fell. Even the judge's jaw clenched at the sheer hatred in Lawson's voice. My vision blurred with rage, but before I could speak, Michael did. He did not raise his voice. He did not flinch. He simply smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent chills down my spine. Thank you, he said softly. Lawson blinked. For what? Michael gestured toward the court reporter, typing furiously. For saying that loud enough to be entered into the official record. Lawson's smirk twitched. Michael continued, his tone cool and controlled. That little outburst just added verbal abuse to the list of violations in my civil rights lawsuit against you. And given that this was recorded, let me explain what is going to happen next. Lawson took a step back. For the first time, he looked scared. Michael slowly lifted another paper from his binder. I have already filed complaints with the Fair Housing Act, the Department of Justice, and, oh, this one is fun, the IRS, because I happen to know that HOA funds were mismanaged under your leadership. The HOA board members stiffened. Some exchanged nervous glances, realizing that they might be implicated too. Lawson's breathing quickened. You would not dare. Michael raised a brow. I already did. Silence. Then, in a perfectly calm voice, Michael delivered the final blow. I do not just own property in this neighborhood, Mr. Lawson. He leaned in slightly. I own your house, too. Lawson's entire body went stiff. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Michael casually pulled out the final document. You really should not have bullied a kid who understands contract law. Because when you approved the HOA's latest property foreclosure policy, you made a mistake. You did not realize that the home you had been living in, it was not actually paid off. It was still tied to HOA funds. And since I now control those funds, Lawson's breath hitched. No, this is not possible. Michael slid the paper toward him. It is more than possible. It is done. The room exploded into gasps. Spectators grabbed their phones, recording the scene. HOA board members sat in stunned silence. The judge shook his head, looking half impressed, half stunned. Lawson staggered back, completely speechless. Michael tilted his head. So, tell me, how does it feel to be evicted from your own neighborhood? Lawson's entire body trembled as his eyes darted over the document in front of him. He flipped through the pages, desperately searching for something, anything, that could prove Michael wrong. But there was nothing. His mouth opened, then closed. His face turned from red to pale. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. He looked like a man who had just seen his entire world crumble. Michael watched him calmly, a slight smirk tugging at his lips. Nothing to say? That is a first. Lawson gripped the edge of the table, his breath ragged. You little... Careful, Michael cut in. You are about to threaten the new owner of your home. The courtroom erupted. Spectators murmured. Some even laughed in disbelief. Phones were out, recording every second. The judge sighed and shook his head. I have seen enough. He turned to Lawson. Considering the overwhelming evidence of mismanagement, discrimination, and illegal activity, this court finds you guilty of HOA abuse. Effective immediately, you are to vacate your property. Additionally, you will be investigated for financial misconduct. Lawson staggered back, gripping his chest like he had been physically struck. His lawyer had already started packing up, clearly wanting nothing to do with this disaster. Michael leaned forward, his voice calm. Oh, and just so you know, the money you took from homeowners? It is going right back into the community. Lower HOA fees, better accessibility, and, of course, new leadership. Lawson's hands curled into fists. You cannot do this. I have connections. I will find a way back, Michael chuckled. No, you will not. Just then, law enforcement officers entered the courtroom. One of them approached Lawson, pulling out a warrant. Richard Lawson, the officer said, you are under investigation for fraud and embezzlement. We need you to come with us. Lawson's entire body locked up. He stumbled back, shaking his head. No, this is a mistake. This is my neighborhood, my home. Michael stood up, adjusting his tie. Not anymore. The officers grabbed Lawson by the arms. He thrashed, shouting curses, but no one cared. The same people who had once feared him now watched with satisfaction. As they dragged him toward the exit, he locked eyes with Michael one last time. Michael smiled. Good luck finding a new neighborhood. Maybe this time, try not being a racist. The courtroom exploded into applause. I turned to my son, my chest tight with pride. You just changed everything. Michael shrugged. I told you, Dad. If they wanted a fight, he smirked. They should have picked someone dumber. We walked out of that courthouse free from the HOA's corruption, free from Lawson's tyranny, and most importantly, free to finally call our home, home. If you believe in standing up for what is right, if you believe in justice, then subscribe now for more powerful stories that expose the truth, spark conversations, and remind the world, real change starts with us.